Diddy ordered the assistant and the security guard to get in the car and took 3 guns with him to Mel's Diner. And he was up to no good. Welcome to the Two Angry Men podcast, the podcast the prosecutors in the Diddy case don't want you to hear. Dum, bum, 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 bum.
And you're Harvey Levin. I'm Mark Geragos, and I'm going to take a wild guess and say that was directed in my direction.
It was. So let's kind of explain. So we found out, our intel is prosecutors filed a motion for the judge. And I don't know where this is at this point, but the motion essentially is they believe Mark is part of the defense team. And I'm not sure myself, but he's certainly consulting with them. And the prosecutors think that Mark should be covered by the order prohibiting lawyers in the case from engaging in publicity that might impact the jury. And so Mark has decided, and we had a talk before we started today, that maybe he should not talk about the Diddy case just for safe measure. Fair?
Yeah, this is when you say associated with the case. Number one, my daughter is one of the lead counsel. So the last thing I want to do is get in her way. Number two, this is a issue that I think 2 episodes I tried to talk about the history of, and I got cut off by you, but you were magnanimous in your admitting that most of our subscribers or listeners actually wanted to hear the legal portion of this. And I was, in reviewing the local rule, it's astonishing to me that the local rule has never been challenged constitutionally because, and this goes to the history, which you don't want to hear, but I'm going to give it to you.
No, I actually do. Okay,
so the history of these rules is, and I've said it before, Shepard versus Maxwell, which is the U.S. Supreme Court case that made the late, great F. Lee Bailey. And he is a young lawyer. I think he was only 29 or 30 years old. Sam Shepard was convicted and went to the U.S. Supreme Court, who reversed the conviction because of the circus-like atmosphere. You'll remember Linda Deutsch, one of the great reporters.
The best.
One of the great AP reporters. Linda and I had a long-standing argument about Shepard versus Maxwell because I said that what that was directed at was the impact on a defendant's right to a fair trial, not the prosecution, clearly. And then the Sam Shepard became the movie starring Harrison Ford,
The Fugitive,
and the TV series. But it has been perverted over the years. This rule has been perverted so that now the prosecution comes out, and I always give this example, and I've written about this in law review articles. I've lectured on it for years. Prosecution comes out. They do a press conference, or the perp walk. Rudy Giuliani was famous for the perp walks here in New York. And they would blanket coverage. We've got our guy, blah, 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 and you do the whole thing. Then the defense, the government wants to gag the defense. Well, that one of the things 20 years ago, which we used to deal with when Kobe and Michael Jackson and Scott Peterson were all being prosecuted, was this idea of you could not do that constitutionally, gag the defense, unless there was a kind of a safe harbor rule. And in fact, in California, the rules of professional conduct had that under the predecessor rule, a safe harbor rule. All of the judges in those state court cases that were California and Colorado all recognized that fact. Somehow it has not been, and I've looked at the rule here, it hasn't been challenged. It talks about, if you look at the commentary under the rule in New York, it talks about the fact that they've reenacted it and there is a lack of litigation, which I find astounding because no matter what you say, and actually I was talking with one of the marshals in the courthouse, it's amazing how New York, the large supersized cases have kind of tilted from California to New York, if you notice, as of late. I mean, you don't even know given this case, that Harvey Weinstein is being retried right now as we speak. Harvey is being retried. Remember last time, first trial, you couldn't get away from it. This time, you'd have to talk to one of his close relatives to even know he's being retried in the Manhattan court.
I agree with you. I think it's unconstitutional to gag the defense because it's the defense that has the right to a fair trial, not prosecutors. And prosecutors usually often start out in Diddy's case with a news conference. So if they're starting out with a news conference, why can't the defense counter that? That said, there's something else, I think. The judge told the jury, don't look at Diddy stories. So the predicate is we're assuming the jury will violate the judge's order, which is kind of weird. So in that respect, I wonder why the judge would say, well, I'm assuming the jury's not going to listen to me, so I'm going to gag you. Can you at least tell us, I know you're in a bind here, but has the judge made a decision on whether you should or shouldn't be allowed to talk? Because it affects our podcast.
Well, I don't think it's a secret because the transcript was posted of our encounter, and there was I think he said that he would be listening. So
no, but that was before this latest thing. Has the judge? Here's the thing: will he be listening to you today? I mean, has the prosecution? I think it was this week filed these papers saying he's got to be under this order.
I'm not going there. I'm just talking from the 30,000-foot view at this point.
Okay. Am I allowed to?
Wait, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're my partner under the definition of the rule. You're associated.
I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. So here's what I'd like to do for 5 minutes. I'm
going to ask you another thing because
Sure.
You've been involved in this. Interestingly, TMZ has been, I mean, you're obviously covering this case. And it's interesting to me when I turn on, or I guess turn on doesn't really do it. When I click on TMZ, I see witnesses, I see lawyers. And by the way, we're in the prosecution case. And that's interesting to me. Where is the clamor that the witnesses shouldn't be talking, or the clamor that the lawyers for witnesses shouldn't be talking? Because it seems like people run straight I'm talking 30,000-foot view, run straight from the courthouse to a bank of cameras. And by the way, this also brings us to full circle to what you and I were talking about right before we got on the air. This is part of the problem that's in the federal courts, because at the district court level, you're not allowed to have cameras.
Right.
At least when you were watching Young Thug, or if right now you're watching Karen Reed, when there is that kind of public interest, it's amazing what the different spin, the different interpretation that you get. Now, unfortunately, and I've said this often, biggest mistake I ever made in Peterson was agreeing with the prosecution when they didn't want cameras in the courtroom.
Yeah.
I thought that would dampen interest down. It had the opposite effect. It kind of amplified misinformation.
Because you want to know what's going on, and you can't see it with your eyes, so the best you can do is listen to what people say about it, which may or may not be accurate.
Well, and take a look. If you listen to, somebody sent me today one particular reporter. If you watch that reporter and then you watch another reporter and you know which entity they're reporting for, you get a completely different viewpoint of what transpired.
I'll do you one better. Within my own office, we have raging debates. We are so divided in this office right now. Oh, I just love this because you're not going to be able to talk about this. And all we can do is judge your reaction. But we're having such a huge debate over this racketeering charge. Because I'll tell you, my opinion about this is that, you look at him, firebombing Kid Cudi's car, breaking into Kid Cudi's house. You listen to, the confrontation that he wanted to have with Suge Knight and all these other things. Most of it, to me, does not seem like racketeering, which to me is an organization that has some underlying crime venture like selling drugs or gun running or hitman or something like that. To me, most of this is this out of control, crazy, criminal, jealous boyfriend. And that's not racketeering to me. But some people in my office say, no, no, no. When he gets employees and assistants to, go over to Cudi's house or to bomb his car or to, confront people or to book a hotel room, that's a criminal enterprise. And we do not see eye to eye even internally.
By the way, have you done an analysis, even anecdotally, of the gender or the age or the ethnicity of who is on which side of that debate? Kind of an anthropological or sociological analysis. And is there a pattern that you can discern as you sit there?
Not really. Not really. It's all over the place in the office. I'll tell you that to me, the best example of this, at least from my point of view, is, okay, if this is a criminal organization and he breaks into Kid Cudi's house, what does he take? Does he go for jewelry or drugs if there were there? Or does he go for electronics? No, he goes for a Christmas present from Chanel. He was going there to see what Cudi was going to give Cassie for Christmas. And that's not racketeering. That's a jealous, crazy, criminal boyfriend. And that's why it just seems so odd to me. I want to mention one other thing, and I don't know if you can get into this, and then we'll move on. But Suge Knight. So the one thing that I thought that they had here was when the prosecution called a witness to say that a security guard went to Mel's Diner on the Sunset Strip to buy some food for Diddy, came back and said Suge Knight's at Mel's. According to the testimony, and this is from an assistant, Diddy ordered the assistant and the security guard to get in the car and took 3 guns with him to Mel's Diner. And he was up to no good. Suge wasn't there, and nothing happened. So I wondered, if they really want to show racketeering, why not call Suge Knight? Because even though Suge wasn't there, here you have Bad Boy Records versus Death Row Records, and they're in this epic fight, and Tupac is involved in all of this, and there's murder and all sorts of underlying allegations. So I called Suge Knight, and I got him in prison, and I talked to him about this, and I asked him, I said, if he came there with weapons, and you were there, would there be a gunfight? And he essentially said yes. So even though Suge wasn't there, it paints a picture of real racketeering with these 2 record moguls and all of this stuff below it. But they didn't call him, which I found interesting.
So over separate and apart, I can't comment on any of that. And that has,
Does this drive you crazy?
very little to do with anything else except a representation of anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Oh, Suge Knight? I didn't know that.
I can't go there. So
well, you just did, kind of. Wow, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay, can I mention one other thing? Because I thought this was kind of interesting.
Yes, because you're going to just keep.
I know, torturing you.
Things that I want to talk about, but I can't. So I get it.
Okay, so everybody watch Mark's facial expressions.
Yes, I know. This is Harvey. Harvey is, for those of you who don't know, apparently I'm like his pet animal that he likes.
Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Thank you, Judge.
Yes, I know. It's payback is a bitch. I got it.
So the other thing that I thought was interesting this week, was this psychologist, this forensic psychologist, Dawn Hughes. And her testimony was interesting. And, I think what she was trying to show was that, people are saying, well, Cassie had a right to leave, and she did have the means to leave. So why didn't she leave over 11 years? So she really got into the kind of, battered wife syndrome, the Stockholm syndrome, and talked about the dynamic when the power is askew between two people, how you might say, well, they could just leave. She explained why they don't. And that was, I think, an important thing for the prosecutors to bring up. And I thought she was an effective witness for prosecutors. And the whole business about she's paid because she's an expert, I don't think that matters to jurors, honestly. I mean, she got paid $6,000 a day. That's her fee. That's what experts charge. She was apparently involved with the prosecution's case somewhat, but I thought I was kind of effective. I just can't believe. Oh my God, I could do this for 5 hours.
I promise you, the chickens will come home to roost. Okay, that's what I'm going to leave it on.
Well, when will that happen? I mean,
sooner than you think. So,
okay, one final thing on Diddy, and we'll move on.
You just said one final thing.
No. But do you think you'll be?
That was an ultimate.
Will you be unmuzzled next week?
I don't know. Let's just talk about something that I'd like to talk about, which is, do you have the clip of the so-called expert in the Karen Reed case, who the prosecution called, who apparently has been getting his degree for 17 years, even though it's listed on his CV for I don't know how long. I just don't even understand who did the due diligence in that case. If you're the prosecutor, how could you possibly think that a guy who has listed on his CV a degree, which it took him 17 years, and by the way, you're the one who's covering Kim Kardashian in the 6 years of law study, and poor Kim, I thought that was a wonderful accomplishment of hers, an achievement, and I applaud her for it. But this expert took 17 years to get his degree.
I know, it's hysterical. I mean, I thought the same thing. It's like, what is this jury going to think? I mean, it's like,
there's no way. I just do not understand in that case. I really do not understand what the Commonwealth is doing. I don't understand what Her Honor is doing. I don't get why they're retrying this case. I don't understand any of it. I really don't. Alan Jackson is there, who I think the world of, and he's trying it. He's a local neighbor of ours in downtown LA, and his partner is a guy I've tried many cases with. I've tried cases against Alan when he was a DA, or actually we had cases against each other. The client passed away before we could go to trial, but he's an excellent lawyer. He's been great since he's jumped out into private practice. And I wonder, I watched that case, and it's amazing to me what if that is what happens in that jurisdiction. Once again, it's astonishing to me to watch what happens and to watch what goes apparently unchallenged most of the time.
Can you explain something to me about this case? I do not understand this. She's being retried on the second-degree murder charge, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand it. The jury found her unanimously not guilty on that charge. For whatever reason, the judge didn't read that out loud when the verdicts were read, but the jury found 12-zip that she was not guilty. And it went up on appeal to, it's like...
It got nowhere. Cal went to the...
I know.
Back,
why?
Went nowhere.
But why? I don't understand that.
I read, I didn't read the state, but I read, I think, what was the cert petition. And I'm just guessing that because it wasn't on the record, and that because it was by way of affidavits, which violate or arguably violate the juror's province of deliberations, that you couldn't bring it in. But my question is, and I've never had this answered, is when they say they're hung on the lessers, because that's what it was,
Right.
in order to get to the lessers, if they're following the instructions, they have to acquit on the greater.
Right.
That's why it's called a lesser. You go
Right.
kind of down the line. Well, if you find that they're hung, and by the way, remember, there was quite a bit of back and forth as to whether or not they had deliberated long enough, blah, blah, blah. Why didn't the judge ask them on the record, did you get a verdict on the greater?
The judge
Because
the judge screwed up. The judge screwed up. The judge should have done that. And it feels like, well, the judge messed up, so the defendant pays? It's like they found it doesn't make sense to me.
it makes no sense. I mean, I watched some of these things that happened there, and I forget the one, but I remember at the time thinking it was astonishing. And Alan had just suggested a procedure, and it'll come to me while we're talking, that they employ there, and they just said, we never do that. And it was something that was just standard operating procedure. Now, Massachusetts is not necessarily backwards in a lot of these things. For instance, they have a law in Massachusetts. I ran across it recently in doing the youth offender analysis in the Menendez case, and they've got a law where they expansively view a youth offender because they have taken the biology and the physiology seriously, and they understand kind of intuitively and anecdotally that most males' brains take there's a lag time to develop, probably because they're growing gonads at the same time or something like that. But there is a delayed reaction on the frontal cortex. By the way, for those who want to push back and say, there was a time when the draft was mandatory, and in countries where there is military service that is mandatory, it's always directed at males, or traditionally has, at males at a certain age group, which is interesting because I'll bet you if you did a sociological study that there would be a correlation between when it was mandatory and crime rates, because you're taking the prime candidates for crime out of the kind of secular population and you're putting them into military service.
Can I tell you what's really funny? You just reminded me. This is just a quick aside, I promise. I was in the Air National Guard Reserves, and
I did not know that. What years?
a long, long time ago, but during the Vietnam War, and this was when military service, when the draft was on, and so I went to boot camp, and I was in the reserves, but at boot camp they told you if you flunked the rifle test at the shooting range, they would activate you and send you to Vietnam, and I'm like questioning this and saying like to my drill sergeant, I don't understand this. So the worst shots are the ones you send? And he did not want to hear from me. And
that'll get you sent to Vietnam.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you what happened. And this is a horrible thing that I did. We had these M15s. They weren't M16s. They were M15s, and they jammed sometimes. So they have like 100 guys laying on their stomach shooting at these targets, right? And so I'm laying there, and about 30 shots in, there were 60 shots. About 30 shots in, my gun jammed, and I panicked because I was thinking I'm going to get activated. And I know how stupid this is, and it's unforgivable, but I turned to my drill sergeant with the gun, and I said, my gun jammed. And he's looking at me with me pointing the gun at him. And this guy was big, and he takes the gun and he extends his arm as far as he can. And he whips me around and jams it into my shoulder. My whole body was black and blue. And he says, now shoot, motherfucker. And I am just shaking like this. And I was so rattled that I started shooting at the wrong target. So I like flunked. And the guy next to me got 67 out of 60.
Well, he didn't go to Vietnam, and you obviously didn't go to Vietnam.
I
So
know, I know. Okay,
that's
I
the
don't know.
moral of that story.
Hey, the moral of the story is don't trust me. So can I talk to you? Can I talk politics with you for a second? I'm dying to know what you
Yes.
think about this. So you represented Hunter Biden. So you have some connection to this world. Um, there's a book out called Original Sin by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. And the book is all about how the people in the Biden administration hid the fact that Joe Biden suffered from old age, essentially, that he was not competent to be president because of the nimbleness of his mind, the fact that he wandered, the fact that he seemed infirmed mentally. Um, I'm really interested to know what you think of that.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when the public didn't know about FDR being in a wheelchair. I wasn't alive then, but I often talked with my father and people of his generation about that because FDR was revered and FDR had a almost a mythological status. And I remember like you, I'm sure, remember where I was when JFK was shot. And little did I know about the infirmities that he had as well, that apparently were hidden as well. So there is a long history of kind of presidential issues where the public is not getting the transparency. My problem, and um, I watched Megyn Kelly do an interview of Jake Tapper, and I thought Megyn Kelly was brilliant. I mean, Megan is, if she was not so successful in what she does and had stayed in the law, would have been a tremendous trial lawyer. I know she probably thinks she was, but I always feel like you're never. I had a mentor who once told me when I thought I was, great after about 10 years, he said, punk, wait until you've got 25 years under your belt before you know anything. And I kind of now understand what he's talking about because you get to a point where it's kind of like what Adam Carolla always says, you got to flex the muscle long enough and get it. But Megan did, I thought, such a number on Jake Tapper. And I thought it was so spot on.
How so?
It was kind of his mea culpa. Was there was the sincerity of the mea culpa really was, I mean, who are you kidding? Basically, there was a incredulous nature to it because it reminds me, and obviously in social media everybody's picked up on it, it's the same kind of coming to Jesus that everybody has about COVID. I mean, the origin, whether it's the origins of COVID, whether it's the ridiculous nature of arresting people on the beach during COVID, the kind of the collective hysteria that and the overreaction to everything COVID related. And it just seems like there was a collective hysteria for half a decade. And this just seems like the tail end of that in a lot of ways, where people almost have separated themselves from what they were doing and the way they reacted 5 years ago, 4 years ago, even now, in this case, a year ago.
Can I give you my take?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Yeah, the people in the Biden administration knew that he was infirmed mentally. They knew it. I know they knew it because I had breakfast slash lunch with a guy who was really involved with Joe Biden and saw him all the time. And this was a year before the election. And he said, we would never put him out after 8 o'clock at night because he was a disaster. So it was obvious. So did people inside the administration hide him? Duh. They're politicians. They're all working for politicians. It's their livelihood. Of course they did. It's what they do when they're circling around the president. The original sin is not with people in the Biden administration. It's with the media because everybody knew this. And there were so many media outlets that so wanted Trump to get defeated that it was more important to them to hide Biden's infirmities than it was to show them. And and look, this is not me embracing Trump because I have a lot of problems, but to me, I watch a lot of that, and it's so obvious that they just didn't want him to win. So why, was there evidence out there for them to report it? So I want to show you something. We put something together. Fox News did a lot of this stuff, but just look at this. It's about 1:20. These are clips from a year before the election and even further than that of Joe Biden. And this is just 1:20. Watch.
Stand up, Dr. Biden, House senators! Coming.
More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half the women in my administration are women. So thank you all. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done. We cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Joan Shingang. I'm going to pronounce right. Shanga Kawawa. As Commander-in-Chief, I was proud to have ended the ban on transgender Americans. All right? God save the Queen, man. I met alone with him, just he and I, and a simultaneous interpreter 68 times, 68 hours, 68 times, more than 68 hours.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nicole,
much.
I appreciate
it's great to have you.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction.
It's really painful to watch, and it's not done in any way to tarnish Joe Biden because he is a good man. But if the media is now looking at this saying it's the fault of people within the administration, and that's all in plain view, and they didn't write it, aren't they the original sinners?
Well, yes, but that wasn't the only area that you can critique. And it's a little much, I think, for people to start talking about the cognitive this or the cognitive that. I mean, mind you, the stumbling, we're also both old enough to remember Gerald Ford. And
but that was literally one misstep on the stairway, and they tore him apart for it. That was one thing.
Chevy Chase made that into a bit on Saturday Night
I know.
Live that must have been done. I can't tell you how many times I saw it. But I am bringing it full circle to the law. It's one of the reasons that I thought and really disgusted me in real time. And on my Reasonable Doubt podcast, I was talking about anywhere that they would listen and in public. All of the cases, the criminal cases against Trump, in my opinion, were outrageous. And I said it in real time, especially the state case in New York, what they were doing in DC, the classified documents case. I mean, the idea that you're going to take somebody out criminally, prosecute somebody criminally for politics, and basically use the Men in Black neuralizer and not remember that you're the same person who in the 90s was complaining about Whitewater and complaining about Ken Starr and complaining about the criminalization of politics. Yet fast forward, you've now got somebody, the shoe is on the other foot, so it's okay, and you're just going to forget about everything that you said back then. That's what is offensive to me, or was offensive to me, and that's part of the problem of the cycle you got to break.
Well, it's not breaking because, I mean, I agree with you. Both sides have done it, but my God, prosecuting or investigating Bruce Springsteen and Oprah and Beyonce and James Comey and all of the things, it is just retribution on steroids.
But like I said, the pendulum swings back and forth, and that's why I think it's always it's politics at its worst.
You know, it's really great.
What?
I just thought of something. Do you realize that we're good friends? We argue a lot. And I just realized something. We're talking about all of this stuff, and you're suing my parent company in the Hunter Biden case, but we're still pals. I think that's really nice. Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't wait for next week. I really want to talk to you about this stuff. And also, you know this is unconstitutional. Why don't you fight it? I mean, you just said nobody litigated this. You're the perfect person to litigate it.
I'm telling you, this, when you read the rule and you read the commentary, they talk about, I forget the exact word, and I don't want to misstate it, but the essence was because of the dearth of case law, they just re-upped the rule. And that's astonishing to me, and I'll just leave it right there.
But then challenge it.
Let's talk next week.
Oh, okay, that may be a challenge, everybody. Okay, we'll talk next week. See you.
Harvey, great to see you.
Yeah.